Hi, I'm Sarah Davidson Flanders, and I wanted to talk a little bit about this idea of being a really fully radiant being. We have so many parts of ourselves, and the way that we operate in the world is often from maybe certain parts of ourselves and not the fullness. What does it mean to walk around with a sense of feeling whole, complete, being able to express from the deepest places of our heart the deepest longings and desires to feel what life's meaning is, to feel like we're walking a path of meaning and purpose. And there are so many layers of how we operate in the world, whether it's how we relate to our own self, how we relate to others, how we relate to the thoughts that are moving through our mind, how we are in relationship or not to our own inner wisdom and our capacity of deep knowing. How are we operating in our actions, our behaviors, our interactions with others, and does it feel in alignment with what really we want to align with in terms of being peaceful, loving, compassionate, understanding, and wise. So in the yoga tradition, there's this very beautiful model that I find very useful and supportive, and it's this idea of the koshas. So kosha is a word, a Sanskrit word, that is sometimes translated as sheath or like a layering. And in the tradition, they talk about 5 main layers. And the most essential layer is called the Anandamaya kosha. And the Anandamaya kosha, we'll give you the spelling of that right here. Anandamaya kosha. Kosha is the word for the sheath, and then the Ananda part is talking of, one translation is bliss. And so this would be sometimes referred to as the bliss body. Or we could talk about our essential trueness, our essential heart, our essential spirit, our essential part of how source or spirit or the divine, whatever word really resonates with you, is manifesting, living, abiding as our base and shining through our being and all of our ways that we're moving through knowing our experience. Then this idea of bliss can feel a little tricky because it's the point to be kind of blissful, happy, always feeling yay, 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 even when there's really difficult, challenging things going on in our life. Whether it's just inner turmoil, whether it's passing of someone that we love, whether it's transitionary states from child getting older, a parent passing or getting older, job moving, changing, our home is changing, people are moving away, whatever the kind of difficulties. And then this, of course, that's just the tip of the iceberg, right? There is just this kind of vast struggle that we often feel in our lives. And so in the very real, let's say, experience of grief of someone that we deeply love, does it mean that connecting to the bliss body means that we're not feeling grief, that we don't mourn, that we don't feel the heart breaking in some ways, that it's really simply to be just happy, happy all the time? And the teachings of, at least through the lineage that I've been really blessed with studying, is that it's not that the essential nature of life is beneficent. It's ultimately deeply, deeply loving. And within that, there are ways and waves of experiencing this kind of dynamism of life. And that when we're really, really, truly in our heart and in a place of deeply loving, or feeling deeply fed by something that's called Parama Prema, like this supreme love of just kind of universal support, But that can support us, that kind of sense of really blissful, beautiful, loving support can be with us even in times of great grief. I was just listening to a radio show, and the man was talking about his wife had passed away and he had written a novel. And the interviewer said, "Why is it better to remember the painful things than to forget the painful things?" And he said, as difficult and really horrific as my wife's illness and passing was, there were some incredibly intimate, beautiful moments. Like when she had been getting her treatment, and we would just hold each other and breathe together. We would just be in each other's presence in this deep love. And they were so tender and so beautiful that even though there's pain there, I choose to remember that. So we can probably resonate with that experience in many levels or layers, even though we may not have that exact circumstance. But that quality of deep appreciation for life and all that it's kind of holding and supporting us, that even in times of great grief, often we're grieving because we've been blessed with having such great love in our life. And that's possible because of something that we're calling Anandamaya kosha. The kind of base of life is love in this teaching. And, at first glance, it might feel kind of, fluffy or sunshiny, that kind of thing. But at a deeper layer, I find it very, very nourishing. That even in times where we're feeling almost crushed by the intensity of life, that there is an element of sustaining. There's an element of support. You can think of many, many stories of either refugees or survivors of one sort or another that, why do they not give up when it's difficult, when they're being hunted or when their cities are being bombed out? Why do they not just give up? Because there's something inside of us as human beings that wants to thrive, that wants to survive, that wants to live life, even though maybe for years it feels like, why is it worth living? But there is some deep, deep inner knowing that knows that life, there's something about life that's worth living. Anandamaya kosha. So then we can say, okay, so the Ananda kosha is the trueness of our essential nature. How come we don't feel it all the time? How come we often don't even remember that it's there? Or we're searching for it and it's not there. Like, what is that about? And the teachings would say that it's really, let me talk about this metaphor that I can resonate with, that it helps me make sense of this. Imagine that the Anandamaya kosha, or this great love, this great light, this great wisdom, compassion base, is like a light in a candle in a lantern, right? Like, remember these kind of like Paul Revere type of glass lanterns, right? This is kind of what I'm picturing. And that there are kind of different layers of glass. Maybe some of the glass, I'm imagining them kind of permeable, okay? So that after a while of maybe the candle, a regular candle going, there's some soot, or there's some dust in the air, or there's some work being done around, and the glass is getting dusty, it's getting dirty. And if it's never cleaned, taken care of, it can accumulate a film or a covering so that perhaps it becomes actually quite opaque, and that the light doesn't actually reach all the way out to illuminate the room. Yeah. So the koshas, or the layers around the Anandamaya kosha, are like these layers that can often get kind of dusty. So the layers, I'll just say them each and describe them, and as I go into a little bit of each one, then I'll show you the spelling as well. So the most kind of subtle layer after Anandamaya kosha is called I'll just actually lift it up right now. Let's bring that up right here. It's called the Vijnana Maya kosha. We have that word kosha again. Vijnana is a word that has to do with deep wisdom, experiential wisdom. So the Magana Maya kosha is the part of ourself that is our self that deeply knows, that we tune in, can really sense and listen to what is our inner truth. It's the part that we might say is our intuition. It's the part that kind of enlivens and is active in our dreams, in our dream state. It's the part that, sometimes when someone calls that you're very close with, and before you pick up the phone, you actually know who it is before you actually answer it, right? This is the Vijnana Maya kosha. This is kind of more that kind of that psychic quality, or that deep sense of being able to listen to whatever wisdom is percolating through. Yeah. Then the less subtle layer than that is called the Manomaya kosha. Manas is referring to the mind. So the part of is the mind that is conceptualizing, making categories, perceiving, seeing things from particular vantage points, understanding the world as it comes through our senses, experiencing the world and then understanding it, and then learning how to then move through that skillfully. That's the mind. The next layer is called the Prana Maya kosha. And many of you are familiar with that word prana. Yeah. Prana is talking about the energetic body, the part of ourselves that is connected to the breath, to the energy that rides on the breath, the energy that fulfills us, right? We know that sometimes we are alive and we're breathing and we're not feeling very energized. It's like the prana feels a little depleted. And there are some times when, who knows why, we haven't gotten much sleep, things are, we're having, not such an easy time in things, but we feel really like we have a lot of energy, right? We would talk about that as our energy body, the part of ourselves that's just pure energy. And then we have, and then there's prana in all of our organs, in our body. Of course, there's prana in our world that we encounter in all things. And then the last one that I want to share is the Annamaya kosha, and this is what we might translate as the food body. So our physical form, what is fed, nourished, created by food, right? So hair, organs, skin, bones, muscles. This is Anandamaya kosha, Annamaya kosha, right? So we've got food body, energy body, mind body, and intuitive body, and then the bliss body, right? And there are ways of talking about it as like food, energy, mind, deep knowing, and then the bliss. But I think in addition to that, simultaneously there is this way of understanding it as physical, prana moving through. There is an intelligence through the entirety of the body form, the Manamaya kosha, and that deep inner knowing, and that at the essential nature that is in every part of ourselves and yet also intangible about where it's located, right? Anandamaya kosha. So these kind of layerings. And so how, in all of the different layers of the body, how do we then start to dust off the panes of the lantern, panes of glass of the lantern? So in the yoga, we have many different practices, and I'd like to share just a couple of the practices as they relate to certain of the koshas. So to dust off the practice, dust off the kind of maybe sooty quality or opaque quality or forgetfulness or heaviness or burden quality that we tend to feel in the physical form, right? When we feel sluggish, we feel not heavy, our body's in pain, we hurt in the physical form, we've lost strength, we've lost flexibility, we feel not well in our physical form, then practices like being aware of our food. Ayurveda is the sister science to yoga, and it's this beautiful wisdom about lifestyle. When do we wake? When do we sleep? When do we rest? When do we exercise? So how do we live with nature's flow and timing? How do we eat? When do we eat? What kind of foods are we putting in our body? Right? Whole foods, nutritious foods, energy-filled foods, foods that have been offered with love. Right? So these are beautiful ways of dusting off the annamaya kosha, or the physical form. Now the other one, of course, that we all know that helps this is our asana practice. So in yoga, we go to yoga class, we move our body, we do sun salutations and poses and etc. This is exquisite for assisting the body in regaining a sense of well-being. And I'm dusting off the tightness and the grogginess and the feeling of like maybe even disconnect or numbness that we feel towards our body. Like, it's not that maybe it hurts, but like we don't even really feel it. We're not in an intimate relationship with it anymore. So the asana assists that. We dust, we clean the panes of glass of that. The pranamaya kosha, the breathing practices, are the way to dust off and cleanse and rejuvenate, revitalize the prana. So whether it's just taking a few deep breaths when you're fatigued or when you're stressed, whether it's very specific pranayama practices that you can do, whether it's alternate nostril breathing, ujjayi breathing, viloma breathing, etc., the breath of fire, all these different specific practices. Or when you're in yoga class and you're just being aware of your breath as it moves through your body, or perhaps, in some flowing practices, you're actually inhaling on a movement and exhaling on a movement, like a vinyasa kind of flow, or even like vinyasa just means kind of placing one's attention with. So inhale, arms up, exhale, arms down would be an exquisite way of refining the prana, the energy of the body. Another way of honoring the energetics is to choose food that haven't been kind of compromised. So there are prana-filled foods and there are not so prana-filled foods, right? So that's a way of kind of combining prana and ana, the food and the energy. The dusting off of the manomaya kosha, or the mind gets so kind of clogged and heavy and confused and troubled. And one of our best practices for this is meditation. Meditation is the gem of the yoga sadhana, or yoga practice. My teacher talks about the I feel like it's like a mental flossing, right? Like you floss your teeth to keep your teeth clean and healthy. And meditation is like flossing for the mind. I remember talking about this kind of like the mind as being almost like this web or this matrix of knowing and understanding. And through our different experiences, whether very troubled or traumatic, or even the little hurts and pains that we've had through our years just by being alive as a human being. It's like the matrix, like a web, has been rent, torn. Visualize like a spider's web with a stick that had cut it, right? And the sides are flapping and it's just not feeling whole. And that meditation has this capacity to knit together the tear and to hold ourselves and to bring the pieces of the mind together in a whole way, a healed way. I certainly resonate with this. And then the Magana kosha, the deep inner knowing, is very shined, cleaned with sound practices, nada yoga. So if you've ever been to a kirtan or a chanting gathering, a lot of mantra, a lot of sounds that vibrate through a room and our inner room, our inner body, our mind space, the kind of ether space in and around ourself. Yeah, and the sounds, like sound healing, starts to kind of really move through the subtle space, and therefore it affects the very subtle body of our deep knowing. Could be chanting, could be mantra practice, could be japa, which is like a repetitive chanting of a particular mantra. Right? And then how do we shine the bliss body? Well, it doesn't really need to be shined up at all. We just need to shine up all the other layers. But the bliss body is supported by the totality of the sadhana or the practices of well-being practices, lifestyle practices, conscious food and conscious intake into our body, whether it's just food or whether it's images and sounds and visuals and ideas. Right? So healthy food, healthy lifestyle, asana practice or some kind of conscious exercise, meditation, and we know there are many types of meditation, sound. Some people feel really healed even just by beautiful music. Right? And so the totality of these practices, nourishing yourself every day or often, right, starts to dust and clean the different layers of ourselves. So we can start to feel the light of our essential nature moving through us in a more palpable way, a more tangible way. And we start to feel that quality of purpose, beauty, meaning, supportive love as the base of life. It's not simply an idea, although it feels that way when the lantern is dusty in our metaphor. And as we start to kind of refine our relationship to the different layers of ourself, gross and subtle, solid and intangible in terms of being able to touch it, we start to honor, recognize, acknowledge, and nourish these layers. The teachings say that the anandamaya kosha, that quality of bliss, quality of heart, the quality of love and support, sense of goodness of life, starts to pervade and permeate our experience of life. So, thank you for listening. And please feel free to email me or comment if you have any questions or things to add to the conversation. And I'm so grateful that I get to share this with you. Thank you for listening.